When car makers decide to enter the Indian market, their introductory products are generally a sedan, a hatchback or an SUV. But Isuzu decided otherwise. They launched a pickup truck. It was called the D-Max, and the lifestyle version of it wasn't really received with the same enthusiasm as its commercial counterpart. There is, however, now a new one, and that could change everything.
It begins with the way it looks and measures. This thing is humongous and even puts a Mercedes-Benz S-Class to shame. Unlike the more sober design of its predecessor, the D-Max V-Cross looks intimidating. Not only because of that broad shoulder stance, but also because of the high and wide grille which you don't want to see in your rearview mirror too often. Yes, it is quite a handful to drive and maneuver in urban environments and parking spaces. But there's a devilish pleasure to it when commuters move out of your way with their eyes wide open in overawe. Then again, this vehicle was born to roam free and without care. That shows in the rugged design cues. The tough bash plate, the metal bumpers, the flared wheel arches, fat 16-inch wheels, the big metal bars that develop as a footboard, and the prominent 4x4 decals, they all clarify the intended purpose of this car. In fact, it looks happiest when it is covered in muck, and no matter what conditions we put it through, this was the best muck job we could give it. Helping people identify what they're looking at is a large Isuzu badge on the front grille and an even bigger lettering on the tailgate. Build quality is generally good, but there are some mismatched panel gaps on the hood and the tailgate. As for the loading space, it gets a tough vinyl lining and joints for tie-downs or accessories like a bay cover, for example. The bay is bigger than its rivals, but sadly not large enough to hold a motorcycle, else I would buy one in a heartbeat.
The cabin of the V-Cross is quite comfortable and well laid out. The seats are quite supportive as well, and the driver's seat is adjustable for height. The rear seat space is quite generous too, and the rear bench can be folded away vertically or horizontally to customize cargo space. So the overall idea of this cabin is to keep things simple while at the same time offering you a reasonable amount of luxury.
The mix of black and beige is well executed and adds to the sense of space. Taking center stage is a large circular cluster that houses the auto aircon controls, and all the buttons are large and easy to use. Above this lies a touchscreen unit that offers Bluetooth telephony and audio playback, but no satellite navigation. Taking the go anywhere attitude a little too seriously, are we? Both the touchscreen interface and the audio quality are up to par, but nothing sensational. There are clever touches like cool can holders, 1-liter bottle holders in every door, and an additional 12-volt socket in the glove compartment. Both the front passengers also get big grab handles. You get steering mounted controls, a multifunction display between the analog clocks, and powered mirrors. But don't expect a push-button starter, auto-locking doors or automated headlights and wipers. Even the build quality is quite average, but not off-putting.
So Isuzu has found this nice balance between comfort and utility. It does cover most of the basic features that you would expect from today's car, but doesn't really leave me wanting for a lot more, both in terms of kit or in terms of quality. Maybe parking sensors, but that's primarily because most of my driving is in the urban environment. The moment you crank the engine, it becomes apparent quite quickly that this is an old school SUV. The 2.5-liter engine, it starts with a loud yet smooth note, and blipping the throttle produces a slow response but gently rocks the car. It's a telltale sign that this is a longitudinally mounted engine and has a soft suspension.
You also realize that the throws of the gear shifter are long, typical to this class of car. And the clutch is surprisingly light and doesn't travel too much. As the revs climb, the engine note smoothens out.
This turbo diesel engine puts out about 136 PS of power and 320 Newton meters of torque. Now, of course, these figures are not very big, but what excites is the way it delivers the low-end torque. You can actually use the 5th gear, which is the top gear for this gearbox, from as low as 40 kilometers an hour. So just imagine the kind of performance that this vehicle will have, or the kind of low-end torque that this vehicle will have when you're scaling inclines or actually going off the road.
The Isuzu is completely at peace with second gear starts from a standstill. The low end is so strong that the V-Cross can chug up an incline in third gear at 20 km an hour, with the engine spinning at only 900 rpm. Even when running on full load, which includes 4 passengers and a rated cargo capacity of 265 kilos, the D-Max only needs between 2000 to 2500 revs to cruise at 100 km an hour. For a vehicle that weighs almost 2 tons, it manages to return an exceptional fuel economy as well.
The V-Cross certainly doesn't enjoy being driven hard, but 0 to 100 in our test came up in a decent 15.6 seconds if you are interested in that sort of stuff on an off-roader or a pickup truck.
Riding the torque is what it loves most, but give it an open road and the V-Cross will come close to a speedo indicated mark of almost 190 km an hour. Unfortunately, the steering wheel doesn't weigh up to my liking for such speeds. At lower speeds though, it is surprisingly light and responsive for a truck of this class. High-speed stability too is excellent even without load. It's only on a series of undulations that the rear feels justifiably bouncy.
The V-Cross employs a rugged ladder frame chassis and has a coil spring setup at the front and leaf spring setup at the back. So the suspension setup is inherently soft, and that makes for a nice well-damped feel off the road and on the road as well, and which includes the fabled Indian road conditions.
Through potholed roads, the body rocks quite a bit given the suspension travel. Around bends though, the V-Cross feels quite sorted and the body roll isn't extreme but quite predictable instead. The MRF ZBRL tyres on our tester impressed us on tarmac but felt skittish on concrete roads, and therefore braking would initiate ABS quite often. But the tyres and brakes worked quite well on some of the broken roads that we tackled, the kind you would generally encounter around farmlands. In fact, the V-Cross tackled most of these roads in two-wheel drive mode.
It's only when you get into sticky situations like these that you need to summon the four-wheel drive.
The V-Cross has a decent ground clearance, but we found our tester scraping the underbody on a few occasions. It's primarily down to the length of this thing, but there are plenty of aftermarket options to make this even better off the road. First thing you would need though is off-road tyres. The all-terrain type on our tester held up pretty well, but was given to deep sticky muck. We didn't need to employ the 4 low on too many occasions, but it did come in handy on really steep inclines.
I'm going to be honest with you, off-roading hasn't been my thing, at least until now. But most of it has been intimidating today, and the way the D-Max has handled it, it's just fantastic. The 4-wheel system, the low-range gearbox, everything's just worked perfectly well. What also helps it is that low-end torque. It's a lovely little package, this thing. Now, this isn't the first time India has been introduced to lifestyle pickups. We've had our homegrown Scorpio Getaway and the Tata Xenon. But this thing is something else. It very nicely mixes bits of luxury with good off-roading capabilities while being just a tad bit more expensive than the Xenon, and that makes it a fantastic proposition. So if you don't really need 7 seats, this is the sports utility vehicle that I would really recommend. Now, I've driven a lot of enviable cars thanks to my job, but there are very few cars that actually leave me wanting them badly. The D-Max V-Cross is one such vehicle.